The alien fleet moved with confidence. They were the scouts of the Galactic Council, an empire that had ruled this part of space for thousands of years. Their ships, sleek and powerful, were equipped with advanced weapons that could turn a planet into dust. They had encountered hundreds of species before, some strong, some weak, but none had ever posed a real challenge. The humans would be no different. Captain Vorak of the scout fleet leaned back in his command chair, a smirk on his reptilian face. The warship ahead of them was large, bigger than most human ships they had seen before, but size meant nothing. Power, speed, and technology won battles, and the Galactic Council had all three. Establish communication, Vorak ordered. The communication officer pressed a few buttons, sending a standard hail. Unidentified Earth vessel, this is Captain Vorak of the Galactic Council Scout Fleet. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately. Silence. The crew exchanged glances. Vorak narrowed his eyes. Maybe the humans were too primitive to understand. Maybe their communication systems were outdated. Send the message again, he said. Another moment of silence. Then a reply. The voice that came through the speakers was deep, controlled, and eerily calm. This is Captain Darius Kane of the UNSV Retribution. Your warning is noted. Now here is mine. Turn back. Laughter broke out on the bridge. Vorak chuckled along with his officers. The arrogance of these humans was amusing. A single ship, no matter how large, could never threaten the might of the Galactic Council. You do not give warnings to us, human, Vorak said, amusement in his tone. We decide who enters and who leaves this space. Lower your shields and prepare for inspection. There was a long pause. Then came the reply. No. The laughter stopped. Silence filled the bridge. No species had ever outright refused an order from the Council. Vorak's amusement faded, replaced by irritation. Power up weapons, he ordered. Target their engines. Let's show them who they're dealing with. The scout ships moved into attack formation. Their weapons locked onto the human vessel. Energy cannons charge, ready to fire. On Vorak's signal, they unleashed a barrage of plasma shots, each capable of tearing through a battleship's hull. The human ship didn't move. It didn't dodge. It simply let the plasma bolts hit. But instead of explosions and destruction, the plasma bolts disappeared into nothing. The ship's shields absorbed them completely, without a flicker, without a sign of damage. What? One of the officers muttered in shock. Vorak's eyes widened. No known species had shields that strong. Even the Council's most powerful warships would have taken damage from that attack. Scan their shields, he barked. The scan results came in, and the officer's face turned pale. Captain, those shields, they didn't just absorb our attack. They redirected the energy. Their power level just increased. A cold chill ran down Vorak's spine. That was impossible. No ship could do that. It violated every rule of known physics. Then the human ship moved. It was fast. Too fast for something that size. One moment it was in front of them. The next it was behind them. The Galactic Council ships scrambled to adjust their formation, but the Retribution was already in position. Human vessel, stand down. Vorak tried to sound commanding, but there was a slight tremor in his voice now. This is your final warning, came the human captain's voice, calm as ever. Turn back, or you will not leave this system alive. Vorak clenched his fists. He would not let some upstart species threaten the might of the Council. He would teach them a lesson they would never forget. All ships, fire at will. The Council ships unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, torpedoes, disruptors. Every weapon was fired at full power. A storm of destruction rained down on the human warship. And then, in a flash, the UNSV Retribution vanished. The weapons fire passed through empty space. Confused shouts filled the bridge. Vorak's hands tightened around his chair. Where had they gone? A moment later, an alarm blared. They're behind us. The screen flickered, showing the massive human warship now looming over them like a silent predator. Its weapons were glowing, charged, and ready. "We are done here." Captain Kane's voice came through again, calm and merciless. "You have made your choice." The retribution fired. It wasn't a volley. It wasn't a storm of missiles or lasers. It was a single, concentrated beam of energy, brighter than a star, cutting through space with terrifying precision. Vorak barely had time to react before his ship was torn apart. The last thing he saw was a blinding light. And then, nothing. The rest of the Council fleet scrambled to escape. Their ships, once proud and dominant, now fled like prey before a hunter. The retribution didn't follow. It didn't need to. The message had been sent. Earth was not weak. And the Galactic Council had just made a terrible mistake. The Galactic Council had ruled this sector of space for millennia. Their fleets spanned entire star systems, their technology was unmatched, and their dominance was absolute. No species had ever dared to challenge them. To the Council, humanity was nothing more than a primitive race confined to its little blue planet, barely stepping into the stars. That was why, when an unidentified human warship entered their space, they laughed. Captain Vorak, commander of the scout fleet, leaned back in his chair, amusement flickering in his reptilian eyes. The massive ship before them was unlike any Earth vessel they had seen before, but it didn't matter. No single ship, no matter how large, could pose a threat to the might of the Council. "Establish communication," Vorak ordered, his voice carrying the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. The communications officer, a thin, insectoid creature with many arms, quickly pressed a series of buttons, activating the standard hail. "Unidentified Earth vessel, this is Captain Vorak of the Galactic Council Scout Fleet. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be fired upon." Silence. The crew exchanged glances, a few chuckling. Perhaps the humans didn't even understand the message. Perhaps their primitive systems couldn't communicate properly. "Send the message again," Vorak said, his amusement growing. The officer complied, repeating the transmission. Seconds stretched into a minute. Then, finally, a reply came through. "This is Captain Darius Kane of the UNSV Retribution." The voice was calm, deep, and controlled, yet there was something unsettling about it, something that made the laughter on the bridge die down. "You have entered restricted space," Kane continued, his tone unwavering. "Your warning is noted. Now here is mine. Turn back." A moment of stunned silence followed. Then the bridge erupted in laughter once more. Vorak chuckled, shaking his head. The arrogance of these humans was amusing. Did they truly believe a single ship could dictate terms to the Galactic Council? "You do not give warnings to us, human," Vorak replied, smirking. "We decide who enters and who leaves this space. Lower your shields and prepare for immediate inspection." Another pause. Then the human captain spoke again. "No." The laughter stopped. Vorak's eyes narrowed. No species had ever refused an order from the Council. No species had ever dared. He leaned forward, irritation creeping into his voice. "You are outnumbered, human. Your ship may be large, but it is alone. We have an entire fleet surrounding you. This is your final chance. Lower your shields, or we will open fire." There was a brief silence. Then Captain Kane's voice returned, still eerily calm. "You should have turned back." Vorak's claws tightened on the armrests of his chair. "Enough of this. Power up weapons," he ordered. "Target their engines. Cripple them. Let's see how arrogant they are when they're drifting helplessly in space." The scout fleet moved into attack formation, sleek warships adjusting their positions, locking their weapons onto the human vessel. Energy cannons charged, plasma torpedoes loaded. This was not an execution. At least not yet. The Council wanted prisoners, wanted to study this new ship. Fire. A barrage of plasma blasts surged through the void, streaking toward the human warship. The bridge crew watched, expecting the familiar sight of explosions and destruction. But there was none. The plasma bolts vanished on impact, disappearing as if they had never existed. The ship remained untouched. "What?" one of Vorak's officers muttered, staring at the screen in disbelief. Vorak's smirk vanished. "Scan their shields." Now. The scanning officer's fingers danced over the controls, his eyes widening as the results appeared on his display. "Captain," he said, his voice shaking. "Their shields, they didn't just absorb our attack. They'd redirected the energy. Their power levels just increased." For the first time in his career, Vorak felt cold fear creep into his chest. That was impossible. No known species had technology capable of doing that. Even the most advanced shield systems in the galaxy couldn't convert enemy fire into energy. The bridge crew murmured in confusion and unease. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. The council fired. The enemy fell. That was the natural order. But now, something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. And then, the human ship moved. One moment, the UNSV Retribution was in front of them. The next, it was behind them. The massive warship, far too large to be agile, had just performed a maneuver that should have been impossible. "Impossible," an officer whispered, voicing what they all thought. Vorak gritted his teeth. He would not let this trickery intimidate him. "Human vessel," he barked, masking his unease with anger. "This is your last chance. Stand down." The response was calm, but final. "This is your final warning. Turn back, or you will not leave this system alive." The crew stiffened. The arrogance, the sheer defiance. Did these humans truly believe they could threaten the might of the Council? Vorak clenched his fist. No more games. All ships, fire at will. The fleet obeyed instantly, unleashing the storm of destruction. Plasma cannons, torpedoes, energy disruptors, all fired at full power. A wave of deadly energy surged toward the human warship, lighting up the darkness of space. And then, in an instant, the UNSV Retribution vanished. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was gone. The weapons fire passed through empty space. A deathly silence fell over the bridge. "Where did they go?" an officer whispered. Vorak's claws dug into his armrests. His eyes darted across the screen, searching, scanning. Then the alarm blared. "Captain," a panicked voice cried out. "They're behind us." The main screen flickered, showing the Retribution looming over them, its massive hull casting a shadow over the fleet. It hadn't moved. It hadn't used thrusters. It had simply appeared there. That was when they saw it. The weapons of the human warship were glowing. Captain Kane's voice came through one last time. "We are done here." A single beam of energy erupted from the Retribution, bright as a newborn star. It was not a volley. It was not a chaotic barrage. It was controlled, precise. It lanced through space, slicing through Vorak's fleet as if their ships were made of paper. The bridge exploded into chaos. Alarms blared. Sparks flew. Vorak barely had time to register what was happening before his ship was torn apart. The last thing he saw was the light. And then, darkness. The few surviving Council ships scrambled to escape. Their proud fleet, once the enforcers of the galaxy, fled like frightened prey. They did not stop to fight. They did not stay to analyze what had happened. The Galactic Council was silent. The vast chamber, usually filled with the murmurs and arguments of representatives from 100 worlds, now echoed with an unnatural stillness. Every eye was locked onto the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The footage played in an endless loop. Grainy, barely comprehensible images from the last transmissions of Captain Vorak's fleet. It showed the human warship, UNSV Retribution, standing alone against the might of the Council's scout fleet. It showed the barrage of weapons fire striking the human vessel, only for the energy to be absorbed into its shields. It showed the impossible speed at which the ship moved. And finally, It showed the single devastating beam that had obliterated Vorek's fleet in an instant. When the footage finally flickered off, the silence remained. No one spoke. No one laughed. High Chancellor Xal'Zur, leader of the Galactic Council, rose slowly from his throne. His face, lined with the wisdom of centuries, was unreadable. "This is unacceptable," he said, his voice low and controlled, yet carrying the weight of authority. "The Council has never been challenged, never been defied. And now, a single human warship has humiliated one of our fleets." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some of the representatives shifted in their seats, nervous. Others clenched their fists in anger. An insectoid diplomat from the Tylox Confederacy leaned forward. Perhaps it was an anomaly, a freak occurrence, a technological fluke. A fluke. A deep voice rumbled. It came from Supreme Admiral Calrath, the commander of the Council's military forces. His armored form radiated power, his sharp eyes scanning the chamber. No, this was no accident. The humans have technology beyond what we imagined. Their shields are unlike anything we have encountered. Their speed is impossible for a ship of that size. And their weapons. His jaw tightened. We lost an entire fleet in seconds. Another representative, a tall avian from the Ari Dominion, fluffed his feathers in agitation. "Then we must retaliate immediately. We cannot allow this insult to stand. The humans must be shown their place." Xal'Zur raised a hand, silencing the growing arguments. He turned toward Calrath. "Admiral, how soon can we assemble a battle fleet?" Calrath's expression darkened. "A full armada can be ready within a cycle." However, he hesitated, something uncharacteristic for a warrior of his stature. "We do not know the full extent of their capabilities. We must gather intelligence first. I propose we send a stealth vessel to Earth. We observe. We learn. And then we strike." Xal'Zur nodded. "Very well. Make it happen." Calrath bowed and turned to leave. The moment he exited the chamber, he tapped his communicator. "Admiral to command. Deploy the Night Stalker." Far from the Galactic Council's core worlds, in the darkness of space, a ship moved silently. The Night Stalker was a phantom, built with the most advanced cloaking technology in the galaxy. It had infiltrated countless enemy territories without detection, gathering intelligence, and striking unseen. Its mission was simple: observe Earth, learn their secrets, find their weaknesses. As the ship approached the Sol system, the crew remained confident. The humans had a powerful warship, but they were still just humans. Their homeworld couldn't possibly be as advanced as the Retribution. But as they neared Earth, they saw something that made their blood run cold. The planet was not helpless. The orbit of Earth was filled with warships, hundreds of them, each one bearing the same markings as the Retribution, each one humming with the same impossible energy signatures. The Night Stalker's captain, a veteran of countless shadow missions, stared at the readings in disbelief. This can't be right," he whispered. "How could they build this many ships?" His second-in-command swallowed hard. "Sir, what if the Retribution wasn't a prototype? What if it was just one of many?" A chilling realization settled over the crew. The Council had believed humanity was weak. They had believed the Retribution was an anomaly. But now, staring at the fleet before them, they knew the truth. Earth had been preparing for war. And they were ready. They only knew one thing: Earth was not weak, and the Galactic Council had just made a terrible mistake. The Night Stalker drifted silently through the void, hidden by its advanced cloaking field. Its crew had infiltrated countless systems before, spying on primitive and advanced civilizations alike, always undetected. This mission should have been no different. But this was different. Captain Zithar stood at the center of the bridge, his claws gripping the armrests of his command chair. His reptilian eyes were fixed on the massive display in front of him. The screen showed Earth, a planet the Council had long dismissed as insignificant. And yet, surrounding that planet was a sight that defied everything they had believed. Warships. Hundreds of them. Each one was unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. Their hulls pulsed with strange energy signatures. Their shields absorbed and redirected scans, making it impossible to determine their full capabilities. Some ships were even larger than the Retribution, their dark, angular forms exuding an undeniable menace. Zithar's second-in-command, Lieutenant Vela, stood beside him, her wings twitching in nervous agitation. "Sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "these readings, they can't be real." "They are real," Zithar muttered, his voice tight. He forced himself to remain calm, but deep down, he felt it, the creeping edge of fear. He had expected to find a primitive world protected by a single powerful warship. He had expected outdated defenses, obsolete technology. Instead, he had found a fortress. The Galactic Council had always believed humanity was weak. But this was not weakness. This was preparation. And the question that haunted Zithar's mind was, preparation for what? "Run a deep scan," he ordered. "I want to know exactly how many warships they have, what kind of weapons they're using, and how advanced their infrastructure is." Vela hesitated. "Sir, their defense grid is dense. If we scan too deeply, they might detect." "Do it," Zithar snapped. "We need information." Vela swallowed hard but obeyed, pressing a series of commands into her console. The Night Stalker's scanners extended their reach, probing deeper into Earth's orbital defenses. The ship remained cloaked, its stealth technology bending light and energy around it. No one should have been able to detect them. And yet, something felt wrong. Zithar's eyes flicked to the display again. The human fleet remained in formation, their ships patrolling the system in precise, calculated movements. But then, one of the ships turned. A massive warship, larger than anything Zithar had ever seen, suddenly changed course. Its sleek, black hull gleamed under the faint light of Sol as it rotated slowly. Its trajectory was deliberate. Vela gasped. "Sir, it's looking right at us." "That's impossible," Zithar hissed. "We're cloaked." The warship continued to turn, aligning itself directly toward the Night Stalker's position. A heartbeat later, another ship followed. Then another. Zithar's blood ran cold. "Break off the scan," he ordered. "Now." Vela's hands flew across the console, shutting down the scanners immediately. But it was too late. The human fleet was moving. Alarms blared as the massive warships accelerated toward them. They did not fire, not yet, but their intent was clear. "They know we're here," Vela whispered, horror in her voice. "Impossible," Zithar growled. But he knew it wasn't. Somehow, some way, the humans had seen them. Their cloaking technology, the most advanced in the galaxy, had failed. "Engines to full," Zithar barked. "Get us out of here." The Night Stalker spun away from Earth, its engines roaring to life. It shot into the darkness, fleeing at maximum speed. Behind them, the human warships did not pursue, not immediately. Instead, they waited, their weapons still primed, their sensors locked onto the Night Stalker. Zithar's heart pounded. "Jump to slip space," he ordered. The helmsman's fingers trembled as he initiated the jump sequence. The Night Stalker's engines flared, space bending around the ship as it prepared to escape. But just as the ship began to vanish into the void, a message came through. A simple, direct transmission. 4 words. "We see you now." Then, before Zithar could react, the Night Stalker vanished into slip space, hurtling away from Earth at impossible speed. The bridge was silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Zithar's claws dug into his armrests, his mind racing. The humans had let them go. Why? They could have destroyed the Night Stalker. They had the capability. And yet, they had chosen not to. The message echoed in his head. "We see you now." Zithar closed his eyes. He had come to learn about humanity. He had come to find their weaknesses. But instead, He had learned the truth. Earth was not weak. Earth was watching. And Earth was ready. The Night Stalker emerged from slip space, its hull trembling from the strain of the sudden escape. The crew remained frozen, their minds still reeling from what had just happened. For a ship designed to be undetectable, the impossible had occurred. They had been seen. Captain Zithar sat rigid in his command chair, his claws gripping the armrests so tightly they left deep grooves in the metal. His cold-blooded physiology meant he rarely felt fear, but now he felt something close to it. He had spent decades in the service of the Galactic Council, observing, infiltrating, and extracting secrets from countless civilizations. Never had he encountered a race capable of breaking through the Council's most advanced stealth technology. Until now. Vela's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, what do we do?" Zithar exhaled slowly, forcing his body to calm. "We report to the Council," he said, his voice firm, controlled. "They need to know what we have seen." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to return to the Council with this news. The Council had expected weakness, expected an easy target. They had not expected a heavily fortified Earth, an armada of unknown warships, or the terrifying reality that humanity had let them escape. Zithar turned toward the helmsman. "Set course for the capital world. Maximum speed. I want to be in the Chancellor's chamber within the cycle." The helmsman nodded, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. The Night Stalker accelerated, piercing through the void of space, heading toward the heart of the Galactic Council's power. The journey was silent. No one spoke. The weight of their discovery pressed heavily upon them all. The Galactic Council chamber was vast, a grand hall where the most powerful leaders of the known galaxy convened. It was here that wars were decided, alliances forged, and species sentenced to either prosperity or annihilation. High Chancellor Gzalzur sat on his elevated throne, his serpentine eyes watching as Captain Zithar stood before him. Around the chamber, dozens of council members observed, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "You have returned sooner than expected, Captain," Gzalzur said, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Your mission was to observe the humans. I assume you have gathered the necessary intelligence." Zithar's jaw tightened. "Chancellor, the situation is far worse than we believed." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some council members leaned forward, intrigued. Others scoffed. Worse. The voice came from Supreme Admiral Kalarath, who stood near the Chancellor's throne. His armored form radiated strength, his piercing eyes filled with challenge. "Are you saying a single primitive species has managed to impress you, Captain?" Zithar locked eyes with him. "I am saying that we underestimated them." Kalarath chuckled. "Did we? A single warship destroyed a scout fleet. Yes, unfortunate. But that is no reason to assume the humans are a threat to the might of the Council." Zithar stepped forward, his voice sharp. "They are not a threat, Admiral. They are something worse." He activated his personal holoprojector, displaying the images his ship had gathered. The chamber filled with gasps as the council members saw what he had seen. Hundreds of warships orbiting Earth, each pulsing with the same strange energy signature as the Retribution. Zalzur's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Zithar gestured toward the images. "We assumed the Retribution was unique, an experimental warship. We were wrong. They have an entire fleet of them, hundreds of vessels, all bearing the same technology, all armed with weapons beyond our understanding." The murmurs grew louder. Some council members looked at one another in shock. Others frowned, unwilling to believe. Kalarath's voice was skeptical. "Ships alone do not win wars, Captain. Do the humans even have the numbers to crew these vessels? Their population is a fraction of the Council's. Their worlds are limited. This does not change the fact that they are outmatched." Zithar's claws clenched. That was not the most concerning discovery. The chamber fell silent. Zithar took a deep breath. "They saw us." Zalzur's gaze sharpened. Explain. Zithar's throat was dry, but he continued. The Night Stalker is equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. No known civilization has ever detected us. And yet, the humans saw us. They turned their warships toward us. They locked onto our position. Kalarath scoffed. Perhaps you made an error. Zithar glared at him. I do not make errors. He pressed a button, and the final piece of evidence played before the council. A simple transmission. We see you now. The room went deathly quiet. Zalzur stared at the words on the display, his expression unreadable. Kalarath's confident smirk had vanished, replaced by something harder, more calculating. Other council members shifted uncomfortably, their previous amusement gone. That message, Zalzur said slowly. They knew you were there, and they let you leave. Zithar nodded. Yes, Chancellor, they could have destroyed us. They didn't. They wanted us to bring this message back to you. Kalarath folded his arms. Why? If they are as powerful as you claim, why not attack? Because they don't need to, Zithar said, his voice cold. They were never the prey. We were. The realization sank in. The Galactic Council had always seen itself as the dominant force in the universe, the rulers of all. The humans, they had believed, were just another species to be brought under control. But humanity had been preparing, not just for war, but for something worse. Kalarath's fists clenched. Then we must strike first. We cannot allow this to continue. Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. The pride of the council was at stake. But Zalzur raised a hand, silencing them. His eyes, filled with centuries of experience, studied the images of Earth's warships. He tapped a claw against his throne, lost in thought. Admiral, he said at last, you will not strike yet. Kalarath's head snapped toward him. Chancellor, this is a mistake. If we allow them to grow. Zalzur's gaze darkened. If we attack without understanding their full capabilities, we risk our own destruction. No, Admiral, we will not fight blindly. We will wait. We will watch. Zithar exhaled, relieved. The Chancellor was cautious, calculating. But Kalarath's expression burned with frustration. He was a warrior. He wanted war. As the council session ended, Zithar knew one thing for certain. Humanity had changed the balance of power in the galaxy, and the council's next move would determine the fate of them all. The council chamber had emptied, but the tension still lingered in the air like an unspoken threat. Captain Zithar stood outside the grand hall, his mind racing. He had delivered his warning. He had told them the truth. And yet he knew the truth was not always enough. He turned as footsteps approached. Supreme Admiral Kalarath. The towering warrior's expression was hard, his armored hands clenched at his sides. You should not have spoken so freely, Captain. Zithar met his gaze without flinching. I spoke the truth. Would you rather walk blindly into war? Kalarath's jaw tightened. War is inevitable. The only question is who strikes first. He took a step closer, his presence imposing. You may have frightened the weaker minds in that chamber, but I am not so easily swayed. The humans are dangerous, yes, but they are not invincible. Zithar sighed. You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about pride. This isn't about honor. This is about survival. The humans have been preparing for something. We assumed they were primitive, assumed they were scattered. But they have a plan, and that should terrify you. Kalarath's eyes burned with stubborn determination. They are still only one species. The Council rules thousands of worlds. No matter how powerful they think they are, they cannot stand against the full might of the galaxy. Zithar shook his head. You saw their ships. You heard their message. They could have destroyed us, but they didn't. That means they are not afraid. They wanted us to see them. They'd wanted us to know what they were capable of. Kalarath's expression twisted into something between frustration and defiance. then they have made a mistake. If they are not afraid, they are fools. Zithar watched him for a long moment before speaking. Do you know why they let us go, Admiral? Kel'Arath's eyes narrowed. Zithar leaned in slightly. Because they are not worried about us. Because they are waiting for something bigger. And if we don't figure out what it is before they do, we will be the ones left in the dark. Kel'Arath stared at him, his lips pressed into a thin line. He said nothing, but Zithar could see the struggle in his expression. Then, without another word, the Admiral turned and walked away, his heavy steps echoing down the corridor. Zithar let out a slow breath. Kel'Arath was a warrior. He saw only battles, only enemies. But this was not a battle they could win through brute force alone. The humans had been underestimated once. That mistake could not be made again. In the depths of space, far from the Council's core worlds, another meeting was taking place. Aboard the UNSV Retribution, Captain Elias Carter stood before a massive holographic display. Dozens of faces filled the screen. Admirals, generals, and intelligence officers, all watching him closely. One of the admirals, a woman with sharp blue eyes and a stern expression, leaned forward. Report, Captain. Carter nodded. The Night Stalker took the bait. They scanned our fleet. We allowed them to see what we wanted them to see. A murmur ran through the assembled leaders. The intelligence director, an older man with silver hair and a calculating gaze, folded his hands. Do you believe they understand the message? Carter exhaled. They understand that we are prepared, but they still don't know the full picture. We kept most of our true assets hidden. What they saw was only a fraction of our real strength. Another admiral, a grizzled veteran with scars running down his face, grunted. So what's their next move? Carter's expression darkened. That depends on how much influence their admiral has. Kel'Arath will want war. He's a hammer looking for a nail. But their High Chancellor, he's smarter. He'll hesitate. He'll wait. The intelligence director nodded. Good. We need them to wait. Every day they hesitate is another day we grow stronger. Carter hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Sir, what if they call our bluff? What if they decide to strike first? The director's eyes flashed. Then we do what we've been preparing for. A heavy silence filled the room. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity had spent decades watching the Council, studying their strategies, understanding their weaknesses. The Retribution and its fleet were not Earth's only defense. Far beyond the Sol system, hidden fleets lay in wait. Ghost ships, black projects, entire armadas that had never been seen. The Council thought they had discovered humanity's strength. They had only seen the surface. Carter took a deep breath. What are my orders? The intelligence director's voice was cold, decisive. Continue observing. If they prepare for war, we will know before they do. If they send another scout, let them see more, but never the whole truth. He leaned forward, his gaze sharp. And if they make a move against us, we will end this before it begins. Carter nodded. Understood. The transmission cut out, leaving him alone on the bridge. He turned toward the main viewport, staring out at the vastness of space. Somewhere out there, the Council was deciding its next move. But so was humanity. And when the time came, they would not be caught unprepared.